Megan Jarvie is an actor and intimacy coordinator based in London, and has worked as an intimacy coordinator in productions such as Dogfight at the Southwark Playhouse.
Hello Megan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're good, aren't we, Christian? We're all right today.
We are very well, yes, thank you.
Recording this on a Friday, what better way to spend our evening than chatting to you today? So we're talking to you today about intimacy coordination, which is a real in topic at the moment with all the shows, sadly not stage shows, that are requiring that type of work. And we thought of no better person to come and talk to. So I'd love to start off with a very basic dictionary definition question. What is an intimacy coordinator?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so passionate about this work, and I'm so excited to get to speak to you guys about it.
Fantastic.
So basically, the kind of cookie cutter way of describing what an intimacy coordinator is, it's kind of much like a movement director. You oversee and you help build an authentic and safe fictional intimate scene, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's something that I really wasn't aware of until very recently, when sort of newspaper articles were talking about it in quite a bit of detail. It certainly wasn't a thing I learnt when I was training at drama school. And now, as we say, both the job role and the discussion of intimacy on screen in particular is everywhere at the moment. Why do you think that that's the case, that it's only just sort of come to light quite recently, this role?
You're so right on that, because it was only in my my final year of training that I kind of got used to and became aware of this work. It really piqued my interest whilst I was there. And I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that in the media that we're consuming right now, so in the shows that we're watching and the shows that are popular, we're seeing much more raw and honest depictions of these characters and kind of more honest and truthful sides to our relationship. And more often than not, this does include, the more intimate moments that you share when you're in relationships. And to create these kind of little moments on screen or on stage, you have to be telling these stories authentically. And that's where an intimacy coordinator can step in to really build a safe and comfortable atmosphere. Because when you're safe and you're comfortable, that's when you make the best work. And that's when, as actors, we make our best choices, I think. So.
For sure. What made you want to train as an intimacy coordinator?
I kind of stumbled into it, much like a lot of things in this industry. I trained as an actor first, and I've worked as an actor and as a voice actor for a number of years. My first job was actually on Balamori when I was 7. So that was my kind of harsh introduction into the industry.
Royalty talking to us tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the term child star, but if the shoe fits, we can use it. But I've been so lucky to have been exposed to so many different sides of our wonderful industry that when I was training at Mountview, we were so lucky to get to work with Ita O'Brien whilst I was training there, and I just thought the work that she did was so incredible, and I'd never heard anything like it before. That I was just so eager to see what I could do and see if there's anything that I could, learn from this side of the industry. So I then started doing a little bit of work as an assistant director, and I was very fortunate to join the team of the Southwark Playhouse's Dogfight in 2019, I think it was. And I was able to put my skills and my knowledge of intimacy coordination into very good use there. So it was an absolute privilege to be able to do that.
Awesome. You just mentioned a bit about your training there. What was the training like? Like, what sort of things did that consist of?
So we learned mostly about Ita's process. So all intimacy coordinators have kind of like a different recipe for the same outcome. It's it's little tweaks. I mean, it's all about creating a safe atmosphere, and it is rooted mainly in movement direction. It's a very long process, and I think that's the thing that's important to remember, is that you can't just glaze straight over an intimate scene and ask actors to just improvise it, because you're never going to authentically improvise as your character, because you as a as the actor, will be improvising as yourself, which isn't authentic to the role. Things can happen when you're nervous, or when you are improvising, that it doesn't create the most authentic experience. So I think it's very apparent in the intimate scenes that we're seeing on our screens now with Bridgerton and Sex Education. Those scenes are so beautifully performed, and it's because of the use of an intimacy director, in my opinion.
Mm.
Yeah, I like the way you say that about you can't improvise as the character, but as well as that, there's the danger of if you're an actor and you're told to improvise something like that, that you don't want to do something that will be inappropriate with your scene partner, or them to do something to you that would feel inappropriate, and you'd be in your head about that rather than focusing on the character. And I imagine, as you say, if it's so, you talk about it's really well rehearsed or really well thought about, and that is it the sort of idea that if you rehearse it enough, the fear about it goes away, and it's like sort of doing a dance, as it were, rather than, as you say, being really nervous.
That's a great way of putting it, because I think ultimately the long and the short of it really is that consent is the most important thing to keep in mind whilst you're doing any sort of work like this. So when you start building the scene with your partner, you have to have conversations with them at first. So you discuss where your areas of physical touch are, as we kind of refer to it. So you talk to your partner about where you really is a no-go zone for you, and that way you can then start building a scene where you're not going to be ticklish or something like that. It's things like that that we remember, that if somebody accidentally tickles you, you're going to break out of character, and then you're no longer working as the character. You're just the actor who is feeling ticklish, and it's never going to feel authentic, and it's never going to look authentic either. So, and ultimately we're trying to tell a story, so you need to keep it consensual and keep it well rehearsed. I think that's a really good point that you brought up, that you do kind of, you block it almost as you would block yourself on a stage, so that you know exactly at every single moment where your hands are, where your scene partner's hands are, what is going to happen. There is no surprises, because that's when you can layer acting on top of it, you know?
Yeah. I've never thought of the idea of sort of tickle zones. That's never really come into my head in that regard. That must be something else if you're trying to do a scene like that and then they get you in your tickle zone. I just think that's a really nice bit of nomenclature. And you mentioned that, and sort of no touch zones, and to speak to your scene partner about these things as an actor. What other ways do you, as an intimacy coordinator, go about making the actors feel comfortable before filming or working on this on a stage production? Are there any other ways that you go about doing that?
So there's a number of things that you have to consider before you go about building these scenes. So, we're human beings, and we have bodily functions at the end of the day. So we need to make sure that there is never any skin to skin contact. So you will always be wearing some sort of shield. So that'll be a cup or a pair of, invisible underwear and things like that, just to make sure that there's never any skin to skin contact, just because it's really important to keep everyone safe in the room. Um, as an actor, you are entitled to a closed set as well, which is something that when I was, and I still do work as an actor, and it's something that is now very much on my radar, is that you can ask for people not to be in the room when you're sculpting these scenes, and
Mm.
it is completely within your right, and it's knowing how to use your voice and how to exercise your own rights, because it's your body at the end of the day. You are completely allowed to not want a room full of people whilst you're really starting to build something that's can feel quite exposing, and it can make you feel it's quite nerve wracking, especially if it's not something that you're terribly comfortable with or terribly familiar with. You want to
Mm.
create a safe space. So it's really important to be able to establish that with your cast beforehand. And this is prior to, like, you cannot spring something like this to people on the day. Honestly, like, some of you do hear some horror stories, but thankfully that's now becoming something that's in the past. So that's really important to talk about. And then you can talk about your areas of physical touch. And, you don't know where someone has a scar, and you don't know where someone feels insecure with their body. So you have to have that conversation with people, just to really kind of bring home at the end of the day that everything has to be consensual, which is the most important part of this work.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you mentioned a few different rules there about
Mm.
the closed set and no touch zones and things like that. What other things how do you go about establishing them set of rules with the actors and the crew? And how do you go about working these out? So what sort of rules should be in place, no matter what, aside from the no touch zone, if people aren't comfortable with that?
I think you just have to be very, very honest with your company, especially with now that we're seeing intimate scenes so much more on screen, particularly, but even on stage. There's moments that you wouldn't even consider that would perhaps require an intimacy coordinator. So this can involve, a violent scene, or a scene that's set somewhere completely different, and you have to kind of establish that with your production team, and so everyone's on the same page. So you go to your team and you go, we are blocking out a closed set for this amount of time, and you do have to be quite firm. I mean, I have no problem with being firm, as my partner would probably tell you all.
Oh
But,
no! Oh no!
I don't like the word bossy, but you've got to assert your rights, and you've got to assert that comfortability and feeling safe is so important. And it's not something that was overly drilled into a lot of actors at drama school, and so we got kind of used to, I mean, I say we as a collective, as the actors of the world. I feel like as actors we do accept the bare minimum of kindness sometimes, and your safety is not a bare minimum. Your safety is the most important thing in the world, so you have to respect that, and people do respect that as well. I mean, I personally have never had a problem with going to a team and saying, like, I'm requiring a closed set for this, and they've always said yes, because that makes sense.
Yeah, it's totally one of those things that, as you say, as actors, we accept a sort of bare minimum, and it's almost in that fear of doing the wrong thing, of asking for too much. But at that point, you're not going to lose the job on set because you want to put your foot down for something legitimate. And I guess maybe it's about remembering that if you're going to them with something that's legitimate, with something that's honest, and as you say, something that's expected about a closed set, that there shouldn't be any problems. Like, it should be either it should be done in the first place, or they should go, oh, of course, absolutely. Like, apart from the few bastards that are out there, I guess that should be an expected thing. I'd love to ask you if there are any differences between how you have to work on and show intimate scenes on stage as opposed to on screen, and then vice versa. Because I know, thinking about it from an actor's perspective, it feel intimidating in different ways, having to rehearse and then perform an intimate scene on stage in front of a live audience of anywhere up to over 1,000 people in some of the bigger stages, as opposed to a scene on camera that could be blown up on a big cinema or TV screen. Like, that's similar but different ways of being sort of worried about that. Do you go about working on those scenes differently?
It's a really interesting question. So, as an actor, if you are offered a role which you're going to be performing an intimate scene, this will be it will be explained in the most detail that you can ever imagine. So you have your nudity clauses, and those things can all be negotiated as well. If you're not comfortable with it, you will know exactly what you're walking into, and if you're not, that contract isn't right, because you have to. It's now kind of industry standard that you have to have everything really clearly. Like they cannot have a contract which involves partial nudity, and then you arrive on set for the first day and they've added a full frontal nude scene, because that's not the contract you signed. You signed the contract for your partial, so that is what you are doing. End of. Like, you don't have to have anyone pressuring you into something that you didn't sign up to in the first place. And it's really important as actors to assert that, and to trust that that's the right thing to do, because, as you said, we're such people pleasers, and it's okay to say no. It's more than okay to say no. But when you're sculpting the scenes, kind of comparatively from stage to screen, it makes my job very easy, because it's exactly the same. So you go about it in the same way, you build it in the same way, so it requires the same amount of detail. And you know what? It does take a lot of time to sculpt the scene, because you have to go through it line by line. You look at the textual clues. You have a very frank discussion, and you cannot be using, layman's terms for body parts and for what happens in the scene. You speak about it very frankly, and without adding kind of emotion on top of that. So rather than, I guess it's more common with kissing as well, because that's an intimate scene as well, which I think we forget. A lot of time it'll be like, oh, just kiss each other, whereas it's like, what kind of kiss, what's the nature of the kiss. So you have to establish what your physical action is in the most basic of terms and in the most basic of terminology, and then you can add, your wonderful nuanced skills as an actor on top of that afterwards. But that can only come once you're really comfortable with what you're doing physically. So I guess the difference is with screen, you sculpt and perform the scene for your takes, and then that's it. Whereas for stage, you're sculpting and performing your scenes, but it has to be the same every night, because it's not fair on your scene partner if you want to add a little bit of something one night that isn't right, and that isn't
totally.
okay. You have to keep it the same way, and that's how this works, and that's how this system works. Is if you maintain that exact sculpting of the scene every single night, and then your skills as an actor will carry that as something that's authentic and sparky and interesting. But it's the two aren't the same, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so important for everybody to feel totally safe in the environment. How do you go about actually coordinating a scene from when you first meet the actors to the filming and the staging? Like Matt said, it can be compared to a dance.
Yeah, so you kind of, as much as you would block, as an actor, you're blocking, and where you're supposed to stand on the stage to say what line, and what prop you're holding in your hand when you say, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day," for example. It's the exact same with intimacy coordination. So you go through the script line by line, and you build the scene from there. So you will know, on this line, my hand will go here, for example. On this line, I will lay you down here. And you talk through everything first. So you discuss it. I mean, a lot of intimacy is based from movement direction and kind of animal studies, and you can do, I mean, I could speak for hours, but none of us have the time for that, about the kind of foundations of it. But you look first at what your text is saying and what your textual clues are. Then you build the scene from there. So I mean, a lot of the time in stage scripts and in screen scripts, they've had a really good and thorough discussion as to what sort of scene that they want and what they want to see on stage, either frame by frame in TV and film, or what the scene will entail. So if it's a scene of two characters, losing their virginity for the first time, and it's their first ever intimate experience, that is going to feel differently than a married couple of 40 years, for example. So you build the scene differently, and then from there you add blocking that is authentic, and you have a really frank discussion with your actors, and everyone is clear 100% of the way exactly what is going on. So you then build it like there, and then you block it through very basically and robotically, and then you can start running it as a full sequence, just like dance. You can't dive straight into a full piece of choreography. You have to learn the steps first.
Yeah, I liked. And did you mentioned there about like using animal studies as a way to find the character and things like that? Are there sort of techniques that actors can look at in advance, maybe on their own to prep? Would you advise actors maybe to use that to distance themselves? Because I know sometimes, as you say, it's important to make sure it's the character doing it and not yourself. So maybe the animal studies would be a good way if an actor gets a script and goes, okay, I'm going to find the nearest comparison to my character, and then that distances themselves further. Would you advise actors possibly looking at that work if they know they've got an intimate scene coming up before an intimacy coordinator comes in? Or is it more useful to be when you first work with the actors, that to be the first time they're doing some form of prep beyond learning the lines?
I think it's always useful to have, when you're building your character, to have these things in mind anyway. So as much as when you're learning your lines, you do, but even before you meet your director and your production team, you do start building, an idea of your characterization. And especially if you have an intimate scene, then 100% start looking in advance and find something that feels truthful to the character and isn't truthful for you as an actor. And I think that's because that's at the end of the day, is that we're trying to tell a truthful depiction of a truthful couple in in a piece of fiction. So you have to find something that feels right and feels honest for that character. I mean, I find a lot of labbing exercises are really useful as well. So
Mm.
that's kind of, if you feel like you float your way through life, find something a bit more grounded, and then it'll naturally feel quite different. Um, and it's, you can then put those practices into play there.
Yeah. And while like the more I researched it, which led me to asking you to come on here and talk to us, and then talking about the questions that we were going to ask you, it's become more and more of a thing of that it's essential to hire an intimacy coordinator, even for a brief amount of time, to make sure these things are done safely and in the best interest of performers. But I know that some productions just may not be able to afford that outlay. Short films or a fringe theatre in particular are always struggling with budgets. So I'd like to ask a couple of things on that, as in, what can directors do to make that experience safe for the actors? And we sort of mentioned a bit before anyway, but what the actors themselves to do to make sure that they're heard and make their scene partner feel comfortable if there isn't an intimacy coordinator present. I presume it's just trying to be educated on the subject and try and fulfill a role that you would do in a probably lesser way.
um, yeah, of course. And I totally understand. And, I spent many a year, as you can probably tell by my dulcet Scottish tones, I spent many a year at the Fringe Theatres. My question would be, if you were wanting to put or to share and display an intimate scene on stage or on screen, and you aren't willing to look into an intimacy coordinator, I would ask why you're including the scene in the first place, to be honest, because
Yeah.
maybe maybe think about whether it's necessary. Does it add to if it's not something that's within your budget, and you know that you're not terribly knowledgeable as a creative, does it add, is it vital to have it in the piece? Could you potentially be putting someone in harm, or in a harmful or triggering situation, and maybe have that question with yourself. But there's a lot of things that directors can do to create safe spaces. So that is, clearly outlining in a contract of agreement before the actor signs onto anything exactly what sort of scenes they will be doing. So that is outlining every single moment of intimacy, from holding hands to, making love. It's like you have to outline everything so clearly, so that everyone feels that they're 100% on the same page and they're in the same room. Because at the end of the day, consent is consent. I cannot bang on hard enough about how important even, consent is in this work. And just like in our day-to-day lives, safety is the most important aspect of this work. So I would say that a director needs to ensure that their actors are being heard, and if they have something that is triggering to them, that you have to listen to that, and you have to not just listen to it, you have to hear it. Because I think people can listen to a concern, but you have to take in that information and understand it, and respect that even though you might not understand where this person is coming from, the fact that they're reaching out to you is important and is necessary to be listened to. So I'd say
Yeah.
that that's quite important for directors to keep in mind. And the respect of a closed set, and that it needs to be sculpted using plain language, and you can't be affecting any sort of emotion on top of that, describing a scene as like sexy or something else, or things like that. It's like that does not, that is your personal affectation. That is not a creative input. You have to put that in a very plain term for it to be understood, and for it to feel like it's a safe space as well.
Yeah, I'd love to pick up on what you said there at the start in terms of writing up a very specific contract of what you are asking your performers to do, so that everyone's on the same page there. But I'd love to talk about that from a very early basis, because I've got castings through on Spotlight for a stage show before or whatever. It literally says, oh, the character will be required to do full frontal nudity. Is your actor okay with this? Don't bother going to the audition if you're not. basically. And it's like, well, you don't even know what that means at that stage. You've got absolutely no idea what that means. Or I know that I've gone to a commercial casting, and I know Christian has as well, where you're required to take your shirt off in the audition, and they sort of mention, okay, you need to be physically fit, or you may or may not need to do this. And again, it's sort of sprung upon you in the audition, or you don't want to say no to an audition to your agent because no one ever really wants to do that. And but sometimes that terminology, especially full frontal nudity, can be really terrifying. And do you think that is going to change in terms of the initial casting breakdowns? I mean, I presume you want it to head in that way. And how would that go about happening?
Well, for starters, I'm so sorry that you had that experience. That does not sound pleasant.
Don't worry, we've dead and buried that for months now. We're fine.
Oh, good. I'm delighted to hear that. That is not okay. Kind of at the long and the short of it is that's not good practice. That's not safe practice. And I would urge in the future, because nobody, that's the thing, especially right now, in these unprecedented times, as everyone's saying, you get an audition through it is exciting and you want to do it. And I can relate to that not only as a creative, but as an actor as well. The opportunity to just use your craft is so exciting. However, if there is something in a breakdown that you're not comfortable with, you need to voice that, and it is completely within your agent's right and capability to just send a wee email and go, oh, could you just outline exactly what my client is going to be required to do in the audition. In auditions, you should not be required to be nude ever, or to perform any sort of intimacy, especially in your first round. You can do chemistry readings and so on, but that's in like finals days. It's very unlikely that you should be asked to do something like that in a first round audition, especially nowadays with the knowledge we have now.
Is there a dictionary definition or a legal definition in the sort of acting world of what intimacy is? Because as you say there, you shouldn't be doing it in a first round audition. And you said that, some people forget that just a kiss on screen is considered intimacy. Is there like a definition somewhere? I know I sprung this one on you. It just came up in my head. or is there a definition for what that is?
I think that's the interesting thing about intimacy is intimacy means something different to everyone. I recently had a wonderful opportunity to speak to a group of new graduates they were literally like, they've just graduated today actually. So I got to speak to the graduating class of a conservatoire. And
fantastic.
Thank you. It was very exciting. But a lot of them, it depends entirely on you as a person. None of us have the same experience of the world as each other, and that goes from our own morals and beliefs, and then it's a whole other question when you start including, we don't know about other people's cultures necessarily as well, and what intimacy means for them. And I think it's just being as knowledgeable as you can as an intimacy director, and as open as you can as well, because intimacy might be holding hands for some people, and or an intimate hug or something like that, or an intimate embrace. That can mean something different to everyone. So I think now you do have to outline it, because your body is yours at the end of the day, and that is, you've full ownership and full you have full say over what happens to your body and what goes on with that. So anyone coming into your space, it could be considered intimate. So it's important to have that discussion, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I was just laughing to myself a minute ago. I remember a audition I had. I got there and they were like, okay, so you need to be in your boxers and you're going to be singing, which I don't do. And then doing some Australian accent to this like financial advert. And it was so uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But that leads me on to the casting director was a female, and I just wonder what advice you'd give to directors of the opposite sex when working on scenes. It can be difficult for, I suppose, a male director working on an intimate scene with a female.
It's a really great question, actually, because I think actually one of the students asked quite a similar question. about sculpting scenes based on sexuality and things like that. And I think if you're following the kind of rules, and well, not rules because that seems very rigid, but the practice of intimacy coordination, if you're following that, it should be the same for everyone, because you're creating a safe and consensual atmosphere that is, people are able and feel able to speak and to voice their thoughts and opinions on a matter. So it shouldn't matter if you're following that rule. But I understand that there can be some hesitancy there, because nobody wants to feel like they're being, inappropriate or making people feel uncomfortable. So I think the most important thing to do is to continue to say things in plain speech. So I know that might sound a bit medical, and you'll feel like it's just so out of the question, because as British people, we are terribly apologetic for existing. So God forbid we use, proper terms for our bodies. But you have to when you're sculpting intimate scene, because if you create an atmosphere of shame, over, a left breast or something like that, then it just creates a feeling of being kind of scrutinized almost. So I think a big part of what I feel passionate about as an intimacy coordinator is to take the shame out of it, because you want to tell a story at the end of the day. We all start our journey as actors because we like telling stories. So that's the most important thing to keep in mind, I think. So I think especially for kind of dynamics in a room like that, for example, I mean, I come in as a female intimacy coordinator, and a lot of the time it'll be, male identifying actors I'm working with, and it'll be their first intimate scenes. So as long as you have a really clear indication of the safety in the room, and especially with younger actors as well, establishing that consent and that safe space is the most important thing. And your the language. It's important to remind people to bring a cup to rehearsal, or bring the underwear that you're going to be wearing for the scene, just so you can really avoid any kind of uncomfortable situations at the end of the day.
You mentioned there that, about keeping the terminology as upfront and simple as possible, so everyone's on the same page. And I'd just like to follow up, as Christian asked there, about intimacy coordination and scenes where you may be of the opposite sex. Would you advise similar measures or similar practices if it's a scene where you might have heterosexual actors performing a homosexual love scene, or homosexual actors performing a heterosexual love scene, or people that identify as male or female, or with different pronouns and stuff like that? Is that the approach that you'd recommend everyone takes? Because I know that with It's a Sin, there's there was intimate scenes in that with gay characters. I know specifically on that production that was an all homosexual team of actors working on that. But would you advise similar practices if the differences are there in that regard?
I think when it comes to performing an intimate scene, you are acting at the end of the day. So you are building a character from a place of authenticity and truthfulness to tell a story that is authentic and truthful. So you are removing your personal affectation towards that by using plain terms, because that no longer is you, actor's opinion on love scenes or on intimacy. That is you building truth from your character's perspective and from their sexual orientation and their thoughts, beliefs, feelings, hopes, dreams, you name it. So I think it shouldn't matter, because if it's being built in the same way, then you're telling the story in the most truthful way that you can, which I think is the most important thing at the end of the day to kind of bring home, is that you want to watch something that's honest, and you want to watch something that feels real, and it's that's the best acting. The best acting is when you watch it and you just go, damn, like that's a really good show, or like that's a really good bit of film. And you get that by creating, safety and creating a really safe atmosphere.
Yeah, and I agree with what you say there. Of sometimes especially when you're growing up in the living room and you're watching a film, and then maybe a scene went on in the past that was an intimate scene, and you just sort of put a pillow in front of your face rather than see it as part of the story. Whereas, as you say, nowadays the sort of scenes in like sex education and that actually tell a beautiful story and then an important story, and love scenes like I mentioned in It's a Sin should be getting broadcast because they're a hugely important part of people's lives. I'd love to quickly talk about Ita O'Brien, who you said came in and initially spoke to you about intimacy coordination, and that's how you got into it. And she's the intimacy coordinator for Normal People. And she said in an article that she's sometimes been hired by directors just to tick a box, just to get actors to sign their intimacy waiver and then leave. How would you deal with a director like this?
Oof.
In the least violent way possible, of course.
Quickly and curtly.
Yeah.
Look, I have been very fortunate to only work with, so far in my career, fantastic, open, kind-hearted directors, which I know is incredibly fortunate, and I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess.
Totally. I'd just love to say I wasn't bad-mouthing directors. I was just using it as an example there that, as you say, on the whole, 99% of them are lovely individuals. Please don't blacklist me from anything. Thank you, Kate. Carry on, Megan. Sorry.
I think you're A-okay. Don't you worry. No, I think it's much... In the kind of stage of my career that I'm at, I haven't come across directors like this. However, hypothetically speaking, I would ask to stay, and I would ask to be a part of the process, because it's important, and Ita's done some absolutely incredible work as well. And I think you see that in the relationship on Normal People as well, how honest that relationship is, and how beautiful the storytelling is through their intimacy. And you get that result from an intimacy coordinator. And there's so many other pieces that go into creating a scene like that on screen. So you have your intimacy coordinator, you have your super talented cast, your amazing director's vision, and then when all of that comes together, it's like a smoothie. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you wanted to get like, a wee cheeky banana and raspberry smoothie, and you're like, I can't really be bothered with the raspberries and that, you just be left with the banana smoothie, and that's not as interesting, in my opinion. I think, especially with as artists, we feel like we have to go on this like personal journey, and I have to do it all myself. You know what? Some of the best things are made with a team, and I think this collaborative nature of the industry is so exciting, and it's creating such incredible work, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future.
Great. I'd love to finish with asking you about how intimacy coordination and work on scenes of that sort of nature should be improved in the future.
Well. I think there's so much progress as an industry that we've made towards creating safer and more comfortable atmospheres on set and in rehearsals for stage. Obviously, the Me Too movement played such a big part in that a couple of years ago, and the kind of leaps that this industry has taken since then has been really inspiring to see, particularly as every year we get a new influx of graduates coming into this industry. It fills me with so much hope that they're walking into an industry that is putting safety as a priority. So that's kind of one comment to make on that. But I think to improve in the future, we can open the dialogue, and we have to open the dialogue ultimately, and we have to create this atmosphere for actors to be able to speak freely and to speak openly about their thoughts and about their worries and about their hesitancies towards certain scenes, because that'll just create a better scene at the end of the day. I think it's becoming so much more commonplace to have an intimacy coordinator on set. So I remember, as everyone did, watch Bridgerton over this merry lockdown .3, and as soon as I watched it, I was like, oh, I'm going to look up who the intimacy coordinator is. And it's rather than thinking, oh, I wonder who the intimacy coordinator is, I just had this like wonderful feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh, I bet there was one. And there was, which was a delight. But then you think about normal people, intimacy coordinator, it's a sin. Intimacy coordinator, Gentleman Jack, intimacy coordinator. Because the acting in it is so bloody good. And that comes from such a collaborative effort. I mean, the talent from the cast is like, it goes without saying, like these are casts with actors who are just incredible. Like, I mean, you cannot fault any of those shows, in my opinion. But how the actors speak about sculpting these scenes in interviews is so inspiring as a, you know, even as an intimacy coordinator and as an actor, knowing that people's safety is being put at the forefront of a creative's mind is just, it fills me with so much joy and it fills me with so much hope. So I think in the future we're going to see a lot more open dialogue involving intimacy coordination. It's going to become an industry standard, I think. I mean, I hope, because I love this work and I'd love to do more of it. And it comes back to your contracts as well. I think transparency in a casting process is something that is improving, but there's always room for improvement there. So I think that's something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the future.
Yeah, I really like the aim of making an intimacy coordinator the industry standard. And as you said there, you know, your thought after watching Bridgerton was looking up who crafted that it's an important piece of the puzzle. And it's been great talking to you this evening, Megan, about and having your passion come through about such a interesting but topic that we really felt we should talk about at the moment, that it is the sort of buzzword at the moment with all these shows coming out, and it's been a real pleasure chatting to you. So thank you so much for giving us your time and knowledge this evening.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a delight speaking to you both.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast.
We hope you enjoyed it and learned something.
We look forward to having you back in the room very, very soon.